If you're an anxious person or you're chronically stressed, it's going to show up in the way that you move. So today I want to tell you how that can happen, why it happens, what it can cause down the road, and of course, what you can start to do about it. I'm Griffin from the North Star Body, joined off camera by Shems the Canary, who's eating right now, but you'll hear him soon. Welcome back to my channel. If this type of topic is something that really interests you, make sure you subscribe. Every week I'm talking about where fitness and movement meet stress management. So today I want to talk about some patterns in the body that present in people who are anxious. But first, let's quickly define what I mean by anxious. When I'm talking about anxious people, I'm talking about any combination of the following. Somebody who scores high on a perceived stress questionnaire, somebody who scores low on a combination of the BOLT and the Exhale Max assessments. So those are two breathing assessments that can correlate with stress and anxiety levels, especially when looked at together. And then the last thing is just somebody who self-identifies as anxious. So if there's somebody who has either been clinically diagnosed with anxiety or just knows themselves well enough to be able to say, yeah, I'm an anxious person. So if somebody has a combination of those factors going on with them, then the thing I see over and over and over again in their body is locked out knees. Now, hyperextended knees is not the only thing that presents in an anxious person. It can be things like hunched up shoulders or rib flare. But I want to stay focused on knee hyperextension today just because with one singular example we can keep going back to, it helps us understand all the context around how this stuff happens. So why would stress and anxiety cause you to lock out your knees all the time? Well, to understand this, we have to understand interoception. And that's just a fancy word for internal awareness of your body. So can you sense your heart beating? Can you sense your breathing pattern? Can you sense temperature inside and outside of your body? Can you sense muscle tension? Can you sense sensations like tingling? How aware are you of your internal world? Turns out, your level of interoception is directly related to your resilience to stress. In other words, the more stressed and anxious you are, the less interoception you're likely to have. One of the reasons for that is something called the vagus nerve. Now, the most famous responsibilities of the vagus nerve come down to two things, really. The first one is helping us calm down, switching on that parasympathetic or rest and digest response. The second responsibility is feeding the brain information about the state of our body. So think about this. The same nerve pathway that's responsible for us coming back to balance, back to relaxation after stress, is the nerve pathway that is also responsible to feed interoceptive information from body to brain. That means if one is not good, the other's not going to be good either, because it's the same nerve. This is why people with low interoception tend to have low heart rate variability or low vagal tone, which just means the vagus nerve isn't as robust as it could be. And this makes sense, right? Because one of the hallmarks of anxiety is being stuck in your head. And if you're in your head all the time, you're not in your body. You are not directing awareness to your internal state at all. All of your awareness is going to the mind. But for somebody who moves in a generally healthy way, and probably somebody who's not super stressed or anxious, a lot of their stability and their power and their movement is going to be generated deep within the center of the body. So you can think of anxiety as being out of practice with feeling our body. And if we're out of practice with something, we tend not to feel safe doing it. We're going to naturally tense or brace with the parts of the body that are closer to the outside world, the extremities. So if I don't feel practiced or comfortable or even know what it feels like to generate stability to hold myself from deep within the center of the body, my body's just going to compensate and tense the parts of the body that are closer to the ground or closer to the outside world. Day after a scary roller coaster ride, you're not thinking, oh, my deep inner thigh muscles are really sore. It's going to be your hands. They call it white knuckling because we're grabbing with the hands, the very outermost part of the body, the part that's touching the world around us. Think about while you're walking, for example, as you extend the hip and the leg, the knee is closer to the ground. We're naturally going to want to drive with the knee extending if we're anxious. Contrast that to somebody with healthy movement who's going to drive from the hip, from closer to the center of the body, with the knee extension being secondary. But if you don't have the interoceptive awareness to be able to tell that's what you're doing, you're just going to default to these more anxious, stiff, outer parts of the body driven movement patterns. What types of issues can this cause down the road? The first one I want to make you aware of is that it can actually perpetuate your state of stress and anxiety, because the mind-body connection is a two-way street. And so it's not just my anxious thoughts that are feeding my feeling of safety and causing me to kind of stiffen up and tense up, but also the state of my body informs the state of my mind via those body to brain or afferent nerve signals, the vagus nerve being one of them. So if my body is always stiff, tense, and locked out, I'm getting a subtle message from body to brain all day, every day, that I am unsafe and that I should be anxious because there's probably a threat out there. So the locked knees themselves are just perpetuating this feedback loop of stress from body to brain, back to brain to body, and so on and so forth. And of course, the other type of issue this can cause down the road are compensations in your posture and movement that could lead to pain and injury. So for example, if you're hyperextending your knees, of course, if you land on hyperextended knees running and jumping over and over again, it could cause knee problems. But what about the rest of the body? I'll give you an example. If you're standing all the time with locked out knees, then that's going to change where your center of mass is. So in order to stop yourself from toppling over forward, your body is unconsciously going to shift its center of mass, perhaps by shifting your pelvis forward. So now it's kind of like you're sticking your hips way out forward, and then that's going to put a lot of pressure on the low back. Now, if this becomes your default posture, then every step you take, again, especially if you're doing more athletic things, is going to be compressive force on the low back that shouldn't be there. That hip shift forward and that low back compression also tends to lead to rib flare, which means that all the tissue in the backside gets kind of locked down and the tissue of the abdominal wall gets kind of flaccid. So that doesn't really allow you to create the level of pressure that we want throughout the abdomen and the rib cage when we breathe. And what do those dysfunctional breathing mechanics cause? Same issues I just talked about, just in a different part of the body. Shallow, inefficient breathing mechanics, sending a stressful signal up to the brain, and the lack of proper internal pressure, leading to even more instability in the ribcage, spine, and pelvis. So if this resonates with you, what can you do about it? Well, it comes down to two things: breathing and body awareness. Body awareness, or interoception, is that skill that underlies all other skills when it comes to the body. And I hate to break it to you, but just existing is a physical skill. So set aside time 3 to 5 times a week to take 10 minutes and just lie down and feel your body. There are plenty of yoga nidra or non-sleep deep rest protocols on YouTube that you can find to guide you if that's helpful for you. Sort of like body scan meditations where you're building the skill of tuning into physical sensations. I have one of my own as well as part of my Guided Breathwork Collection that I will link down in the description below. However you want to do it, just make sure you're dedicating time to actually feeling your body. If you're anxious, this can be tough. You're asking yourself to get out of your head and into your body. Not anxiety's strong suit. But hopefully, if you didn't know it already, this video makes it pretty clear that it's exactly what you need. Then the other thing is to work on your breathing pattern. If you are anxious, it is all but guaranteed that your breathing is at least somewhat dysfunctional. They're closely related. If you want to stop sending your brain signals from your body that things are stressful and tense, you're probably going to want to start with the thing that you do every single second of every single day, which is breathing. Yes, sometimes focusing on just softening your knees or relaxing your shoulders can be helpful. They're not going to have nearly the impact as breathing is going to have, since you take at least 20,000 breaths a day. And changing your breathing behavior starts with knowing what functional breathing looks like and setting aside a little time to practice that. The good news is practicing functional breathing also helps practice the skill of interoception, because you have to be aware of your body in order to practice something so deeply nuanced within your body. To get you started, I have a free audio recording that's about 8 minutes long. It guides you through the 4 qualities of a good, healthy, resting breath and guides you through relaxing your body while practicing this skill. It's totally free. I'll include the link to that one down below as well. Also launching a free community on School starting in February. There's going to be a ton of completely free foundational course content on breathing, stress management, movement and body mechanics, plus access to me and other like-minded people through all the community discussions. Of course, more detailed courses available for purchase if that's the road you want to go down. But for me, it's all about community and finding the right people who resonate with this type of stuff. So whether you know you need to work on stress, anxiety, breathing, movement quality, general fitness, or you just like this stuff and you want to dive a little deeper into it with like-minded people, keep an eye out here. Make sure you follow me on Instagram at the North Star Body. And once it's live, you'll get the link to join for free. That's all for this week. See you next time.